On a cool spring night, May 14th, 1983, the steady stream of headlights along Interstate 5 in Southern California was business as usual. But for two California Highway Patrol officers, one car just didn't look right. Near Mission Viejo, a brown Toyota Celica was weaving across the lanes, a classic sign of a drunk driver. They flicked on their lights for what they thought would be a routine traffic stop, maybe just a simple DUI. What they were about to find, however, would blow the lid off one of the most horrifying serial murder cases in American history. The driver, a surprisingly calm and well-spoken man, didn't seem drunk at all. But as one of the officers glanced into the passenger seat, the routine stop became a full-blown nightmare. Slumped against the passenger door was the body of a young man, 25-year-old Marine Terry Gambrell. He was dead, strangled just moments earlier. In the back, they found a half-empty bottle of liquor and a container of pills. But the most chilling discovery, still waiting in the trunk, tucked away, was a handwritten, coded list. It was filled with 61 cryptic phrases like Harry Carey, Airplane Hill, Portland Eck. This wasn't some random piece of paper. It was a scorecard, a gruesome ledger of death that would expose a quiet, model citizen as a monster who had been hiding in plain sight for more than a decade. So who was this man? To understand the monster, you first have to meet the man. And by all accounts, Randy Stephen Kraft was the last person anyone would ever suspect. Born in 1945 and raised in a stable, middle-class home in Midway City, California, Kraft was the definition of conventional success. He was smart, he did well in school, and people genuinely liked him. After earning a bachelor's degree in economics, he served his country honorably in the Air Force from 1966 to 1971, working as a radar technician and even earning commendations for his service. After the military, he settled into a comfortable life as a freelance computer programmer, a respectable, well-paying job. He was politically active, charming, and known for being in a long-term relationship. Everyone who knew him saw an intellectual, unassuming guy, a good neighbor who lived a quiet, ordinary life. But this perfect picture of normalcy was just a mask. It hid a deeply compartmentalized life, one that allowed a predator to thrive while the man went about his day. While Randy Kraft was programming computers, the scorecard killer was hunting. The contrast is terrifying. The boring reality of his day-to-day life versus the unimaginable horror of his secrets. The killings didn't start in 1983. They stretched back more than a decade to at least 1972. Throughout the 70s and early 80s, Southern California's freeways became hunting grounds. A wave of fear spread across the region as the bodies of young men kept turning up along the highways, leading the media to coin the term freeway killers. The problem was, this grim title was shared by several murderers operating in the same area at the same time, including William Bonin and Patrick Kearney. This created a fog of confusion that made it easy for a killer like Kraft to operate without being noticed. His method was terrifyingly consistent. He preyed on young men, often hitchhikers or Marines, who were vulnerable and looking for a ride. He'd lure them into his car with offers of drinks and drugs, then knock them out before torturing and killing them, almost always by strangulation. It then dumped their bodies, usually nude or half-clothed, in remote areas or nearby freeway off-ramps. He came dangerously close, being caught early on. In March 1975, the head of a 19-year-old named Kenneth Courtwell was discovered in the Long Beach Marina. Investigators found out that Courtwell had been led away with promises of beer and Valium by a man named Randy. Kraft was brought in for questioning, but with not enough evidence to hold him, he was released. He just walked away, free to kill again. Only a month before, in February of 1975, the bodies of 18-year-old Jeffrey Allen Nilsson and 20-year-old Roger James Duvall Jr. were found near a freeway after they were last seen leaving a friend's house. That was the pattern. It was there, but the link to one man was still missing. For years, the bodies just kept appearing. The discovery of that coded list in Kraft's trunk was the breakthrough. It was a cryptic tally sheet, a personal record of his murders. Investigators got to work painstakingly trying to decode the 61 entries and link the bizarre phrases to missing persons reports and unsolved homicides across California, Oregon, and even Michigan. Every entry they cracked painted an even darker picture. For instance, the entry New Year's Eve was connected by prosecutors to the murder of Mark Howard Hall, a young man whose body was found in January 1976 after suffering horrific injuries. The phrase Airplane Hill was linked to a John Doe found in Huntington Beach who had been brutally assaulted, and entries like Portland Egg proved his crimes crossed state lines, connecting him to victims found near Interstate 5 in Oregon. As the detectives connected the dots, a sickening realization began to set in. The list suggested a victim count far higher than anyone had dared to imagine. Of the 61 entries, authorities were eventually able to tentatively link between 43 and 48 of them to known murder victims or missing persons. The scorecard was his private trophy case. In a chilling twist, investigators realized that Terry Gambrell, the man in the passenger seat, wasn't on the list. Neither was Eric Herbert Church. Another man Kraft was confirmed to have killed in 1983. This meant the list wasn't up to date, or his real victim count was even higher than 61, maybe closer to 67 or even more. The man they arrested for one murder was suddenly suspect in dozens. For over 10 years, Randy Kraft was a ghost. He moved through the sprawling suburbs of Southern California, leaving a trail of bodies that baffled one police department after another. The sheer number of victims, combined with the other freeway killers out there, created a chaotic mess that helped him slip through the cracks again and again. The cases were piling up, but they were spread across so many different cities and counties that connecting them to one person was nearly impossible. The cat and mouse game finally ended on that night in May 1983. That routine traffic stop was the break investigators had been praying for. The evidence was immediate and undeniable. Terry Gambrell's body in the passenger seat was proof of a murder happening right then and there. The discovery of over 70 disturbing photos of unconscious or dead men in his car gave them a whole gallery of potential victims. And that scorecard? It was the key to unlocking his entire secret life. A search of Kraft's home sealed the deal. Investigators found clothing and keys belonging to several victims, physical trophies that tied him directly to their disappearances. The Orange County Crime Lab went into overdrive, leaking fibers, blood, and other evidence from Kraft's car and home, multiple crime scenes. Within a week of his arrest, the man who was a suspect in a single murder had become the prime suspect in at least 24. The phantom of the freeways finally had a name and a face. The full scale of Randy Kraft's crimes was about to be laid bare in a trial that would shock the nation. If you find these deep dives into the investigative process compelling, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss our next case. The trial of Randy Stephen Kraft kicked off in September 1988, and it would go on to become the longest and most expensive criminal trial in Orange County history at the time, costing over $10 million. Kraft was charged with 16 counts of murder, plus special allegations of sodomy and mayhem. Throughout the whole thing, his behavior was just chillingly detached. He chose to act as his own co-counsel, showing zero emotion as the horrifying details of his crimes were laid out for the jury. The presiding judge, Donald A. McCartan, later said that Kraft treated the entire trial like a breach of contract case. The evidence against him was, in the judge's own words, overwhelming. In May 1989, the jury found him guilty on all 16 counts of murder. On November the 29th of 1989, he was sentenced to death. In his sentencing, the judge called Kraft's crimes unimaginable and a descent into evil. Despite decades of appeals, his conviction and death sentence were upheld by the California Supreme Court in 2000. Randy Kraft remains on death row to this day, currently housed at the California Institution for Men. He still maintains his innocence, claiming he was framed due to anti-gay biases from law enforcement. His family also insists he isn't guilty, but the mountain of physical evidence and that chilling scorecard tell a very different story. Randy Kraft is behind bars, and he will never hurt anyone again, but his story isn't quite over. That scorecard, the very thing that exposed him, still holds secrets. Of the 61 entries, somewhere between 15 and 17 have never been deciphered. They're just cryptic notes on a page, but they represent real people whose families have been left without answers. They are the final silent victims of the scorecard killer. Even now, decades later, the case keeps evolving. In 2023, thanks to the advances in forensic genealogy, investigators were finally able to identify a John Doe victim from 1974. He was likely one of Kraft's earliest kills, and after nearly 49 years, he finally got his name back. It's a painful reminder that the impact of these crimes continue to ripple through time. Randy Kraft was one of the most prolific serial killers in American history, a man who turned murder into a bookkeeping exercise. And while he sits in a cell, the true number of lives he destroyed and the full story hidden in his secret scorecard may forever remain a mystery. If you like this story, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and tell a friend. This is The Dark Room, and I'm Matt Cochran.